So I'm Trejo. Say that 10 times fast. This is Robert Meyer. I'm a veterinarian with Zoetis. I spoke here last year and talked about the importance of vaccination and those programs that help us. So we've got a limited amount of time to teach BQA today. So we're going to try to make it as easy as possible. We're going to pass out these quizzes to you, and we're just going to go over the quiz. And if we have any questions around the questions, then we'll discuss them and go down that path. Now, I put this BQA.org website up here. There is a 172-page document on there if you want to know all the details around these questions, and it's there, and I encourage you to do it because we are not going to have the time to go into depth to cover that today. He mentioned Tyson. You know, this is some more of that public pressure push coming down the pipeline. We've seen it on the antibiotic side from FDA over the last few years. Everybody know what the Bvd is? Veterinary Feed Directive. They require now for us to get a prescription from a veterinarian to feed any feed-grade antibiotics. In this January in California, you could no longer buy antibiotics over the counter at all. So no penicillin or LA200 or anything like that. We had a discussion with FDA about a month ago, where they sent out a statement saying they're probably going to do that nationwide. They named LA200 and some stuff we carry that was in that discussion. So we think that public pressure is continuing to come down. And the reason I'm going down that kind of antibiotic track, that's no different from what Tyson is doing, right? They're saying we want our producers to be qualified and work cattle correctly to have a better public perception. It's the same path.
So, Che, real quick, there's two pieces of paper that are going around. The one is the quiz, and the other is a contract. And I'll need you to fill out both of those, please. After we complete this together, anybody who goes through this will be certified, so I'll need you to get all your contact information on that contract, turn it back into me. I will submit it on your behalf, and then they will get you your certification. So if you are interested in being certified, just return the BQA contract back to me.
Everybody got a pen? Robert, you missed a guy up front here.
Oh, sorry.
So this is the vaccine program that Zoetis recommends, and I went over it last year. This is a very good program. It's a little different. It's got Enforce in there at the branding spot. If you have some questions around that protocol, that's why we're here, and you can visit with us later. Now, if we do all these things, and here's the start of the BQA, we give all these products, but if we don't handle those products correctly or work our cattle correctly or have stressed cattle when we're giving these products, these things don't work, right? They work great when we use them in the right spot, but if we don't use them correctly, we're all through. And if I don't know what I'm doing wrong. All right, here we go. We got number one. Hey, Chelsea. Is she gone? Okay. I just can't see the slide. Everyone involved in the production of cattle and beef is responsible for delivering quality product to the consumer that exceeds expectation and increases demand. True or false? True. So everyone. And sometimes we forget this, right? I mean, even the guy with the 15 head of cows is extremely important. The guy that we hire for, I was going to say $5 an hour, but that doesn't exist anymore. The guy we hire for $15 an hour is extremely important in this chain. You know, if we don't teach them correctly and we turn our backs on them and they're there all day long and they mishandle cattle or abuse cattle, we've kind of had a break in the chain. So it's everyone involved. Being aware of the best management practices will enhance product uniformity, become aware of industry issues and practices, establish guiding principles to enhance food safety, all of the above. You got some questions?
Yeah, and so Che, what are those?
What are what?
What are those best management practices?
Yeah, he's asking me to remember an acronym that I don't remember.
Well, so what we had, and maybe you could talk about it a little bit, but biosecurity, BQA, herd health management plan, and HACCP, and so maybe elaborate some on biosecurity.
Yeah, so what does biosecurity mean to everybody? It's a fancy word. It's really we have to start out with an assessment. Okay, we got to know where our risks are in a population. And so a cow-calf risk assessment will be different than a feedlot risk assessment. Right, a feedlot risk assessment is going to have to worry about who's coming on and off that property routinely. We're going to have checks coming in. The cow-calf risk assessment might be more suited to purchased cattle. If you bring home one of these bulls today, do you turn him out with the cows right off the bat? Do we? No. No, so we're bringing in a new animal to our herd, and we helped develop this program at Trinity Farms on the vaccine, so they're excellent vaccinated cattle, but there's still diseases that we have to manage around. And so if we're bringing cattle in, we kind of want to quarantine cattle for 3 weeks to ensure that they're not going to break with a disease that we might bring into our herd. Everybody know what Bvd test is? If the animal is not Bvd tested, it is an excellent idea with any purchased animal, regardless of cow, calf, bull, that we Bvd test those animals, because the best vaccine program on a cow side fails when we bring that disease in. You're bringing it in, so we're trying to prevent it from the animals, but it's still going to replicate through that population and cause trouble. So that risk assessment is the first tool. What's the next acronym, Robert?
HACCP.
Oh, no.
No?
No, we got assessment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Resistance, isolation, traffic control,
Okay,
sanitation.
so let's talk about resistance. So that's really on the animal. So I talked about bringing that bull in. Now, if your herd is susceptible to disease, you need to know what your breaks in your biosecurity assessment is. So if we have a herd that uses modified live vaccines in the cow herd, uses modified live vaccines in the cows, and at the appropriate times, that's probably one of the highest levels of disease resistance we can have compared to a non-vaccinated cow herd. And we would treat those differently. If I have a non-vaccinated cow herd, I am really opening myself up to any purchased cattle, and so I would avoid bringing in any outside cattle in that situation. And so we have to know the disease platform of our animals so we don't kind of foul up there. Okay? What was the next one?
Isolation.
We mentioned this earlier, that 21-day kind of quarantine period for any new cattle, and that's something extremely hard to do, but it is key. So the Brd Break Curve, we got some feeder guys in here. So when we start cattle, when we buy a set of cell barn calves, they don't come there and automatically break with respiratory disease. Our peak BRD curve kind of happens at day 10 to 21. And so if we just brought cattle home, they're going to look pretty healthy, and we don't know that, and yet we've introduced them to our cows, and now they break. And so that's why that kind of 21-day period is there, that we can see some of those diseases that they might have initially picked up manifest themselves.
Traffic control.
Traffic control. And that's more of a feed yard thing, but it's coming down the line, especially on a large operation like this, to know who comes in and out of your place, not only on a biosecurity measure, but on a terrorist measure, right? I mean, we have to be kind of aware of that in our day and age. Okay. The Beef Quality Assurance Program is designed to assist everyone to set production standards, become aware of industry issues and practices, establish guiding principles to enhance food safety, all the above? All the above. When you keep records of antibiotic, vaccination treatments, what information should be recorded? Product ID and lot number, animal ID or group lot ID, person who treated the animals, all of the above. All of the above. Now,
Jay, where can that be found, that information?
yeah, so if you could just have a box of vaccine, most vaccines, serial and dates are on the bottom. If you'll flip them over, they've been stamped on there. Or on antibiotics, they're definitely printed kind of down low on the bottom of the wrapper. So that's the serial and lot ID. Now, the animal ID or group ID is on you. I've never had an FDA person come and check me out as a veterinarian to see if I was recording IDs. But since this VFD came out, we have heard of it. Okay, so there was a clinic, Bear River in Tremont, Utah, that got checked this year out west. And so they went to the clinic. They asked them for the VFD that they had written. They asked them for the diagnosis of the disease. They then went to the owner. They came to your place and asked for a feeding record and documentation of when they fed and how much they fed. So this is, it's Big Brother looking at us. And so you have that thing to kind of think about now. So whether it's in a cow-calf red book or whatever program you got, we need to be writing down when we treat animals and what we do with them. Not just treatment for their sicks, but for prevention on the vaccination side, to see when we did these things. If Tyson wants to look back down the chain and you guarantee that you gave vaccines and you didn't write anything down, there's kind of a hurdle there, right? So we've got to focus on that. We're good here? Under the National Beef Quality Assurance Guidelines, records should be maintained for a minimum of...
I got this one wrong.
Yeah, usually you want to err on the side of caution and say 3 years, and that's the wrong answer. It's 2 years for the BQA standards. Now, for any pesticides records, they do require a 3-year retention. This is just something you kind of got to know, nothing real special here. An animal's point of that balance is defined as the eye or the shoulder, the backbone, the hip, their ability to walk in a straight line. So before we answer this, what does an animal's point of balance have to do with BQA? Knowing the flight zones of cattle. And so there's probably the biggest change in BQA over the last 5 or 6 years is they've really tried to incorporate some animal handling techniques. Knowing how to move cattle forward and back without the use of hot shots. Avoiding our whipping sticks going across the loins. And so these are kind of techniques that we need to be learning and teaching. Now, most of us grew up in this industry, and if you've ever done some of that Bud Williams cattle handling technique side, and they had a gentleman here last year kind of teaching those same things, some of those can be contrary to how we work cattle and how we were brought up to cattle. Like to push cattle, we automatically want to get behind an animal and push them. That's our natural instinct to do that. And so it's a teaching away from that. I mean, now you're trying to get at 45-degree animals and get on that point of balance and make that front animal move instead of getting behind the back. We are not spending any time on learning how to do animal handling today. I'm just telling you, it is extremely important to kind of be aware of this and learn and do this. And so what was the answer? The eye or the shoulder. So if we have an animal and we want him to move forward and we're standing in front of him, we can definitely step back and keep pressure on that shoulder, wherever that is, or the eye of the animal, and make him stay back, versus if we move forward past that, he's going to move by us. So if we want to speed up an animal, which direction do we go? Do we go against him or with him? If Robert is an animal, which he is, and we have a Zoetis flag for this award, and he is walking this way, if I want to speed him up, do I walk past him? I walk past him. I walk against him. If I want to slow him down, I'm going to try to walk in the same direction as him so he kind of stops and watches me. So who said past him? Yeah. Somebody at that table over there? There we go. Right there. So the goals of low-stress cattle handling are understanding natural animal behavior when handling or designing facilities, recognize and make the needed changes to human behaviors that affect cattle, keep animals and workers safe, healthy, and happy, all of the above. All of the above. I put this in here. It is part of the BQA guidelines of when we can actually work cattle and be safe. This is a temperature humidity index. Now I'm from the deep south, and what this chart tells me is I can never work cattle. So next question for a flag is, when is the best time to work cattle? Early. You got it right down front here, yep. Who said that? Right here. So, you know, once we're in the summer or spring, fall, summertime of months, it is extremely difficult to meet the requirements of this chart and work cattle in the afternoon. And cattle build up heat. Okay, they don't sweat like we do. We can do something and we sweat and we cool ourselves off. But a cow, she builds up heat continually through the day and she breathes her heat off. And so that she has to have that time of rest and time of cool down at night to be able to breathe that heat off and be okay. And if we work them late in the day, in any of those time of years, she never has that chance to get rid of heat and she just carries it over to the next day. And so feedlots typically really on working cattle get up early to work cattle. I mean, you're more likely to see feedlots working cattle at 4 and 5 in the morning than you are 4 and 5 in the evening. And so we kind of got to have this in our mind that afternoon is kind of bad, and especially any time between out here, probably March and now. Okay, I mean, it's very difficult to do.
And Che, I would add, we got this online, but it is pretty easy to find. I even had in a past life, I managed a heifer yard, but I had that hanging in my office, and we religiously tried to work off of that. And so I would recommend that people can find that fairly easily.
So where do we stick at in humidity around here? Not yesterday, it's pretty close to 100%. But are we in the 40 to 45, 50% humidity days in Western Oregon and Washington? Somewhere in there? Oh. No, did I say east? No, well, I meant western. So, right, the west side we're more humid. Yeah. And so you can see if you get in that 50% relative to humidity, the danger zones start at 75 degrees outside temp. I mean, it's pretty easy to work cattle and get them in trouble pretty fast. Which of the following statements are true in terms of transporting cattle? Well, we like answer D, don't we? Smooth starts, gentle stops, and smooth cornering decrease injury and stress to the animals. Take into consideration wind chill and humidity factors. Always observe the proper density and loading numbers for the trailer you're using. If we're putting cattle in a trailer and they're stepping on their side of their legs, and if you're bunching them that tight, that's too tight. I mean, that's a good general rule to know if you see that animal kind of reaching out and bracing himself and he's coming in contact with another one, that's too tight. Who can legally prescribe the use of any feed additive other than as directed on the product label? And I wanted to put Mark Malot's name up here just to, to rib Mark a little bit. But feed supplier, so this is back to the VFD. If we have antibiotics in the feed, who can change that antibiotic recommendation for you? Feed supplier, no one. Feedlot manager, veterinarian. Everybody who said veterinarian? You're all wrong. So me as a veterinarian, I can make recommendations to other antibiotics not pertaining to feed and go off label on some of them. Like even though Exceed might not be labeled for foot rot, if I have exhausted other measures, I could tell you to give Exceed to help treat. But in the feed grade world, it's regulated completely different, and the answer is no one. No one can change the route of administration or feed grade antibiotics. So even though us vets like to think we're God, livestock producers should inspect feed and feed ingredients for all the above. Unusual color, odor, or mold, high temp damage, foreign matter, all of the above. Intramuscular and subcutaneous injections should be given in the neck. This was the biggest change that BQA did early on, right? We shifted the shots from anywhere to a place that doesn't have a lot of cuttable meats. Now, so what about IM injections? Can we give IM injections anywhere else other than the neck? Say it again. So that'd be sub-Q. Yep, so there are Exceed, I mentioned. Exceed antibiotics can be given behind the ear. That's its only route it's supposed to be administered. But there's a distinction here in IM and sub-Q, and they don't want IM injections at any time going anywhere else. Sub-Q injections, you see a lot at branding, somebody giving it behind the shoulder or pulling up the brisket and giving it, and what they're saying is it is extremely difficult in a branding age baby to get 4 shots when his neck's pinned down on the ground and keep them. And how far apart are we supposed to keep shots? The general rules width of the hand, the number's 4 inches, okay? And that's extremely difficult in a baby. Now, if these are IM injections, they're saying, so what? Flip him over. You got to give the IM injections where they belong in the neck. But they're kind of making a supposition here and saying sub-Q, if you're going to be double stacking vaccines, it's probably better to put them in another place. Just sub-Q vaccines are going to be less reactive to muscle. Now, if you want to look technically, it is hard to avoid muscle by going behind that shoulder. It really is, because there's that twitching muscle that we get fajitas off of that sits right back there, and you're going to stick it. You just are. So if you can stay on the neck, stay on the neck. So it's not in here, but I just want you to remember that 4-inch width or that hand width that we need to avoid, because these vaccines, most of them are pretty non-reactive when you put them in the right spot, but when you stack stuff on top of stuff, you get bad problems. Is it best to go 4 inches side by side or up and down? Side by side. We got a flag there? Absolutely. So if we put them up and down, what happens? That's right. It drains down, and so you'll get some of that vaccine draining through the sub-Q that meets the other product that you're administering. You know, we don't carry multi-man, but we've had some bad reaction reports when our product is used with multi-man, and neither one of them are very tissue reactive. But you put an injectable IBR vaccine, Bovishield, and multi-man together, and you get a bad dude. So it's just acknowledging where those shots go is extremely important.
What about needle size?
What about it? Recommended needle size for BQA, 16 gauge, 5/8 inch is where they want to be. The proper method of needle disposal is in the garbage, in a sharps container, in the burn barrel, none of the above. How many of us have sharps containers? Whoa, get some flags. So this is an effort that we have to do to actually do it correctly, because most of us put them in the garbage or back in the vaccine bottle and they go in the garbage. So sharps container is the correct place to go to. Okay? We had a winning stuff. How often are we supposed to change needles? When we run out of vaccine? Was that the answer? Yeah, so your guideline's going to be every 10 head. Okay? And so, in a cow-calf space, a lot of people don't like the 50-dose, or a lot of people like the 50-dose tanks, but I really, as a veterinarian, like you to use 10-dose because it triggers in your mind that I've got to stop and change. What about if we burr that needle? Can I file it down on the chute and keep on going? Nobody's looking? No. So we burr that needle, we change that needle. I know that's frustrating. We'll put a new one on and go stick the first calf and stick the chute. We got to change that needle. There are a number of factors that influence tenderness. Which of the following play a role? Amount of marbling, activity of enzymes that break down muscle proteins after slaughter, amount of connective tissue, all of the above. Oh. Which of these following was true? Carcass bruises cost the industry $22 million in trim at the time of processing. So this number, I hadn't read B yet, but this number has dropped dramatically, and I'm going to misquote this, but this was somewhere above 100 million when we started BQA, and it kind of tells you the success of the program is that it's dramatically reduced the number of bruises in these cattle. How about dart cutters or carcasses that must be cut with dart-handled knives? We like that one? That's a good one. Rough handling can increase an animal's chance of bruising. It's both A and C. So the dairy industry still has a problem with injection site lesions in the hips. And most of our BQA fallouts come from that side, and it's a human safety thing, right? I mean, those cows are locked in stanchions. They're used to working on the back side. They give injections in the back end. So it's not an easy thing for them. It's an easy thing for us with the type of facilities we have today to move all those shots up to the neck. Another big key is we know those bruises can stay long periods of time. So notice some of these flags, we've kind of gone to them and away from our sticks. And when calves are going through the chute, or even as 5-weight calves, that bruise can stick with them till kill. So hitting cattle on top of the back is a no-no, right? It'll stay there, especially with a hard stick. So I encourage you to change your crew's stuff out and go with something they can't turn into a stick, right? There's some of these flags and paddles, they'll turn them into sticks, and we just try to need to get away from those kind of things. Which is a true statement? Nutrition impacts animal health and performance. Hey. Transportation has very little to do with carcass quality. It's recommended that injections can be given in the loin. Refrigerator temps do not affect the taste of a steak. It's kind of surprising on that one, right? I mean, there's obviously some refrigerator temps that do affect the taste of the steak. When we talk about refrigerator temps, what do we think is correct? 1, to freeze meat, but 2, to keep vaccines in. Do we know where we want our refrigerators to be? Yeah, so those are right. So that's 37 to 44 is that range. Now, I've got a refrigerator in the house. Mama's complaining it ain't staying cold enough, and I think this is a good idea to use as my vaccine cooler. Is that a good idea? The refrigerators we've got in our barns that we put our vaccines in, are those good refrigerators? They are probably not, and we buy thousands of dollars of vaccines a year and stick them in a $100 refrigerator. So I encourage you to get you a refrigerator thermometer and put in there and just check it. Avoid the door. Okay, and I don't remember the exact details of this, but the BQA deal in Idaho did a study, and they went around to ranches and put some recording devices, temperature recording devices in those refrigerators, and pretty much all of them failed. I mean, it was big time, they don't work. And so I'll go back to that starting slide of our vaccine protocols. Very good vaccine protocols. We stick them in refrigerators, don't work. They become very bad vaccine protocols. Correct storage of vaccines will allow for more freezer space, enhance human safety and public perception, make them more effective at treating animals, both B and C. B and C. Making steps to improve the consistency and marketability of beef animals begins with the breeding herd and includes consistent, gentle, low-stress animal handling. So why is that important? So we mentioned dark cutters earlier, and that's directly related to the animal's attitude right before he goes into the plant and he gets ramped up and scared, and it changes the makeup of his muscle structure. But what about doing it on the cow-calf level? That's right, and this not only matters with dark cutters, it also matters with animal health. I mean, there's bunches of documented studies showing that gentle animals don't get as sick and gain better, right? And so if you don't make those changes at the cow-calf level, it carries all the way through to the kill floor. And so when we're picking our bulls out and we're keeping replacement heifers, and we've got some that act like they're from Florida, we pass on them. Okay, no matter how good they are, we pass on them. And they work on that here, right? I mean, they work on that here to provide you with a quality animal that is not a bouncing off the pins kind of animal. And so that has some pass down to it. Quality feed handling practices and proper medical treatment. Educating all workers regardless of the amount of animal contact they have. Yeah, the all part's really important because we like to brand out west. And we go to Brandon's, and our buddies that work cattle one time a year show up. And, you know, we've got to pay attention to that. And sometimes it's not easy to tell your cousin to stop, but you got to do that. And my 5-year-old that's trying to get on them and buck them out every time we let them up, maybe not such the best idea, right? So we kind of got to pay attention to those type things. All feedlot visitors should check in with the office for what important reasons? To say hello to the staff. That's important. To sign in for proper biosecurity measures, to let management know that you were there. Both B and C. Withdrawal times. Amount of time between treatment and when the animal can be processed, amount of time between animals becoming nervous and then stepping forward, amount of time between purchase and time of harvest, another word for taking a break. Hey, and that's on that antibiotic label, that's on that vaccine label. There's a site called FARAD, FARAD, that you can go to, and it'll tell you the withdrawal levels of all medications. their last flags. So I've mentioned Exceed before, and Exceed's got a withdrawal of, Robert? 13 days. He knows his job. Now that's when we give Exceed, and somebody mentioned behind the ear earlier, when we give Exceed behind the ear, it's 13 days. What happens if I give an injection of Exceed in the neck, sub-Q? Same withdrawal, different withdrawal? Should be longer. One, it's illegal. Third generation cephalosporins is what Exceed is, are regulated by the FDA that they're critically important for humans. And so a veterinarian cannot manipulate how and how much you give of that antibiotic. And if we change routes, it's illegal, and it extends that duration for withdrawal by 6 months. Okay, and so most calves that get treated with Exceed, and you see somebody putting it in a dart or doing something else and not giving it in the ear, that calf's going to violate withdrawals by the time he's killed, most likely. So we've got to kind of pay attention to those. Understanding human strengths and talents in the workplace can affect quality assurance by increasing the quality of care of animals, making humans happier and less stressed on the job, public perceptions of animal raising, all the above. That's the test. So what we want to do is, there's a second form to fill out there, which is the, did you give them the second form? Okay. So I need you to take some time and fill that second form out. Robert's going to hang up here up front, and then when you get through filling those out, we'll both be up here. You can bring them to us, and we will answer any questions that you might have. So I mentioned that vaccine strategy before, and I want to close with the importance of why we do it is both for animal health and dollars. Animal health, the number is a 4-fold reduction in deaths. Okay, we give vaccines correctly at a branding pre-weaning, 4x reduction in death loss. Okay, and that's an important number. The second number is dollars, and this was pulled off Superior Video this year. If you wean cattle and they're vaccinated appropriately, there's a $5 a hundred plug to you, plus the addition of weight gain. $5 a hundred. So on a 5-weight, that's $25 a head. It easily pays for your vaccine and your effort to do these things. The number we have at a Western Video, if you take the effort to sign up for the Select Vac program, was $72 a head. So if you go through these efforts, please document what you do. I mean, that's the importance of these programs. We fill out, we sign up with one. All our vaccine companies have platforms and programs to get on. Most sales companies have platforms and programs to get on. But it pays to do it. Okay? I think that's it, guys.